Hi, Chip. It's a privilege to meet you. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation.
Thank you, Waldek. It's great to be with you, and I wish we were in person together.
Hopefully one day, but I remember, I think we started the correspondence between us like a few years ago on the email, and then it started to, for me at least, to be evident that this is the guy which is, I think, equipped with the one, for me at least that time, I was step by step discovering the qualities, but he's open. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, it's me. Thank you again. And I was thinking how we should present yourself to people who maybe do not know your story, because you were the great entrepreneur. You made your business, you exit that business, then you join one of the most successful startups in the, I would call it, human history. Then, and you turn it in a different way that maybe even you expected at the beginning, or the founders expected. Then you wrote the books, that many of them, they are bestsellers, but also you are doing something which is, I think, most of your activity today focus on that activity. How we should then define, for those who don't know you, Chip Conley is?
Chip Conley is a strange man. There are very few people who like to run companies and start companies and also like writing books. I've written 7 books, so I'm an author, often at the intersection of psychology and business. But I like to run businesses. I like to create new businesses. And so I'm maybe one of the best known hospitality entrepreneur pioneers in the world, having focused on boutique hotels in the early days, helping Airbnb and home sharing, and then now creating a business in the longevity travel space, the Modern Elder Academy, MEA, the world's first midlife wisdom school. So I think that's one way to look at me, is I'm at the intersection of psychology and business, whether I'm an operator or an author.
The first book that actually was recommended to me, it was Peak. And the one that actually intrigued me from the first look at the book, that you are connecting business with the Maslow in such an evident way. And I said, I need to dive into that book. And then step by step, I was discovering how you really not mixing, but integrating in the smart way, because it's not just preaching, it's just implementing the things from the psycho into the business.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the things we forget about is that, the most neglected fact in business is that we're all human. And understanding psychology is important. I mean, yes, it doesn't show up on a balance sheet. It often doesn't show up in a business plan. But the psychology of understanding organizations and understanding people and understanding yourself is pretty essential. But it's a soft, they call it a soft skill, but it's a real differentiator. So it's not, I don't think it's a soft skill in the sense that it's less important.
Yeah, and I think you are touching very important element. Strongly, I believe business to business is people to people, whatever you do. It's a small change in the letter, but it's a big change in the meaning and the value creation at the same time, coming from business to people. But if I provoke you a little bit as well in that moment, I don't like the statement soft skills, because soft by the name, it gives you the weak part of your behaviors, of the features. I call it fundamental or social skills rather.
Success skills. Let's call them success skills, because yeah, I mean, there's skills that help you to be successful. Therefore, yeah, I agree with you. I use that term, and then I immediately said it's the ultimate differentiator, because it really is the differentiator. A lot of people do not learn these skills very well. And Daniel Goleman 25 years ago showed that emotional intelligence is the #1 variable associated with successful leaders. So let's recognize that it's not going out of style, and it's hard to teach. But part of what I try to do at the Modern Elder Academy, but also my books, is help people to understand how to be more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, and then be a successful entrepreneur, and putting it all together with the emotional intelligence. I would like to come to your story, how it became that you started your presence and Airbnb, because I am driving a little bit toward the book that you finally have published here in Poland in Polish in Q1 next year. And your story about Airbnb started with your presence and Airbnb actually.
So after I sold my boutique hotel company, after I'd run it for 24 years at age 50, I had 2 years off, and I really enjoyed those 2 years. I went around the world to the world's best festivals, and I studied hot springs. I was fascinated by hot springs, and I wrote a book called Emotional Equations. And then out of the blue, in age 52, I got a call from Brian Chesky, who's the co-founder and CEO of Airbnb, saying, "Hey, Chip, how would you like to help us democratize hospitality?" And I thought that was really interesting. Democratize hospitality, that's a big statement. And I said, "Tell me more." And Airbnb was a small tech startup in San Francisco. I was based in San Francisco. And next thing I knew, I was there. And initially it was supposed to be 15 hours a week, and it turned out to be 15 hours a day. And that's when I said, "Okay, you got to pay me." And long story short, I got paid very well, but I became the modern elder there. And I didn't like the phrase at first because it made me sound old. But at age 52, I was twice the age of the average employee there. And so, I was older. And but what they said is a modern elder is someone who's as curious as they are wise. And I loved that. Curiosity and wisdom, the perfect alchemy, was what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so long story short is I spent 7.5 years with them. And, it was 4 years full-time, 3.5 years part-time. And I learned a lot. I learned as much from them as they did from me. I ultimately called myself a mentor and an intern at the same time, because I was learning a lot from them about digital intelligence, because I never worked in a tech company before.
So did you know anything about digital when you joined Airbnb, or you were just kind of a, very beginner? At least curious, I understood.
Well, I knew they were a tech company. I knew they wanted me to come in and help them become a hospitality company, but I hadn't really thought about, how hard this might be for me to be working in a tech company for the first time, because they're using a language I didn't understand, and et cetera, et cetera. But I had to get over the idea that I had to pretend that I knew everything. I had to be open to be the oldest person in the room and sometimes the dumbest.
I like it.
But mostly the wisest, because you can be dumb about something and then ask great questions. And so I became famous in the company for asking really interesting questions that helped the company to see their blind spot, or our blind spot. So I loved it, and it led me to writing that book that's coming out in Polish, which is Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder, I believe is the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's my story at Airbnb. And that ultimately led me to thinking, well, why don't we have a place where people in midlife can reimagine and repurpose themselves professionally, personally, spiritually. And that's how the Modern Elder Academy came about. And we have 2 campuses, one in Mexico and one on the beach, and then one in the U.S., in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
But when you are talking about entering as the wisest, in certain respect, of course, person into the room, sometimes there is a statement, if you are the wisest person in the room, you should change the room. But I think your curiosity, and how to call it, beginner's mind helped you to be also learner, contributor. But what I'm trying to say now, how you managed your ego?
Yeah, it's a very important question. When you start a company at age 26 and you grow it to 3,500 employees and you run it for 24 years, you build some habits. And some of my habits were, I liked if there was an article about the company, I wanted myself to be on the front page. I wanted a photo, and I like making decisions. I'm pretty decisive. So yes, I would tap into other people's points of view, but I like to be able to be one who makes the decision. And so long story short is, when I joined Airbnb, I was not only mentoring the 3 founders, I was reporting to Brian, who is 20 years younger than me. And I had to get used to the idea that I didn't have to make all the decisions. And in some ways that was a relief. But I also had to get used to the idea that I was reporting to my mentee, which is a really unusual situation. But as long as I trusted him and I had confidence in him, and I really saw that my role there at Airbnb was not to get my name in the newspaper, but was to make Brian a better leader. And that's really what I did. And, here we are 11 or 12 years later, and Brian now for over 3.5 years has been running the one of the most valuable hospitality companies in the world, and he has no business background at all. So I feel proud of that. And so what defined success for me changed. And that allowed my ego to change. So what defined success in the past was, hey, is the business doing well? Am I making money? Am I making good decisions? Are people recognizing me as the leader of the company? And when I joined Airbnb, it was less about that. It was more about how do I make Brian a better leader and his two co-founders. So that helped.
It reminds me a little bit the approach, not totally, but elements of the servant leadership, that you are really happy when you see somebody's growing. Then you do the things, you get the influence, but your definition of a success is the change, and is also the part of our journey when we are growing during our lives.
Totally, I agree completely. So, I think after age 50, we have to realize that something's shifting inside of ourselves, and the primary operating system is no longer the ego, and now it's the soul. It's something that wants to give back, wants to make a difference, wants to have a legacy, and that's what I've been feeling for over a dozen years now.
Yeah, because especially when you are successful and you've got kind of a habit of being successful, and you are on the top of the ladder, sometimes there is no other step on the ladder. You need to change the ladder or redefine the ladder on which you are climbing, or maybe climbing is no longer a way to go forward.
That is exactly right. Yeah, David Brooks wrote a book called The Second Mountain that's all about this, and my new book that I have just written is called Learning to Love Midlife: 12 Reasons Why Life Gets Better with Age, and I talk a lot about that as well.
Okay, because it reminds me again another book. Maybe I don't want to create the discussion only about the different books, but late bloomers, so all years you are just a late beginner. It reminds me all the time that you can start new things irrespectively of the age. The question is that I understand also from your book and from your interviews that it's really about the purpose, about the passion, and about really something which is giving you the reason when you wake up to go to do something that you do.
Yeah, purpose has been proven to be a life changer. It actually creates longevity, it creates happiness.
That's the point. That's what I really wanted to go, because everybody is talking about technologies, about chemistry, about all this stuff which is defining the new definition of the health span, lifespan, health span, and there is so not enough discussion about the purpose.
Well, actually, there's not enough discussion about the socio-emotional side. It's mostly focused on the physical side of longevity and wellness. Okay, so what's going on with your stem cells and your telomeres and your diet and all of that. So that's fine. We need that. But what's missing is a conversation about purpose, about the psychology of how do you feel better as you get older. There's so much research on this that shows that when you shift your mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, you gain 7.5 years of additional life.
Awesome.
That's according to Yale University. And then also the social side, the fact that social wellness, the number one variable for people who are living happy into their 80s and 90s is how invested were they in their 50s in social relationships. And this is particularly true for men, because women actually are pretty good about keeping their social relationships. Men don't do nearly the job that women do. And so long story short is we focus a lot on Peter Attia and, Mark Hyman and Andrew Huberman and all of this very technical scientific stuff. But we're missing the fact that purpose and feeling a sense of community and feeling a sense of a sense of feeling good about what gets better with age are all important to helping people live a good, long life.
I would come back to the book that we are working on, Wisdom at Work, because initially I thought it's a great book for people at my age. I would call it 40,
Okay.
45, 50. I am 52 today. But I more and more am convinced that this book could be also a great inspiration for young people to have hope, because they will be living even longer. So maybe they can have the sense of urgency already today. And for those who are older, it's also hope book, I would call it, because you can repurpose your life or find the purpose also in this combination between generations. How do you feel about it?
I totally agree. I think there's two reasons why younger people can find it helpful. Number one is, yes, as you've said, younger people will be older people if they're lucky. And so therefore, it's a precursor to that. But number two is the book is really a testament to the value of intergenerational collaboration and diversity around teams. You know, how do we create more age diverse companies and teams? How do we value the fact that a younger brain is fast and focused, an older brain is more holistic and connecting the dots? And when you put those brains together, you get the best of both worlds. And there's a lot of data that supports this, including some beautiful studies at BMW in Germany. Long story short is I think the book is very relevant to people at any age because it's also about wisdom. How do we cultivate and harvest wisdom in our lives?
You said once that wisdom is not what you learn, wisdom is what you share. And this is also the part of our initiative here in Poland when we collected, because initially I was calling my professional friends from different C-level, etc. And I said, guys, it's great that we are in such a gremium, but maybe we should call also young people to give them the chance to learn, but also for us to give us the chance that we are not just complaining that we are getting older. Because let's get some fresh air and let's create something by definition. Let's walk the talk. And that's how we created this concept of generation for generation, not two, but for generation, because it goes both ways. And it's also, as I said at the beginning, hopefully the sign of curiosity and openness.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think we are in a different era, and we have people staying in the workplace longer, and we have power in the workplace moving younger, partly because of the digital intelligence that younger people have. And so in the United States in 2025, next year, the majority of Americans will have a younger boss. We have never seen that before. So that's a really interesting statistic because if you think back 25 years, you would never have guessed that. Because older people are in charge of younger people. And that's how it worked. But this is a whole different era, and I'm excited about the era because I think it requires collaboration. Therefore, because quite frankly, younger leaders need to microwave their emotional intelligence. They are not as far along. They may be great specialists on what they know, but they don't have sometimes the wisdom and the broader work and life experience that can come from someone older who can be helpful.
I remember one of the book recently I discovered, it was Arthur C. Brooks about discussion about fluid intelligence that comes to you as a natural part of your maturity, which is also the part of that, and it does not stop you from learning, but you are just contributing different way.
Yeah, when you're young, you have fluid intelligence. When you're older, you have crystallized intelligence. That's right. So you move into the crystallized intelligence era. Yeah, I mean, the science is very clear on this.
Two final questions, because I'm in real estate and I'm trying, and please tell me what you think about it. If we have collaboration between generations, if we have the company that is using this, I would call it a trade-off between digital, emotional intelligence, different generation, how do you think we can benefit from that if we create a part of the cities that are inspired by this collaboration? What could be then the outcome from this kind of a team where this multi-generational teams are conceiving the future use of that part of the city?
Well, the value in integrating ages in thinking about real estate is the younger you are, the longer you will be affected, or the more the decisions you make will affect that person, because they're going to be living in that city, and they're going to have to deal with the design decisions, the construction decisions, and how you operate. So, but often younger people in the real estate world don't have a voice, because one of the challenges with younger people in real estate, and I got into real estate when I was 19 years old, but real estate's a very capital intensive industry, and therefore often it's older people who are making the decisions because they have the capital. And that's why older people really need to tap into younger people as they're conceiving and designing and building things, because if you just leave it up to the people with the money, they are sort of a little bit clueless about trends and where things are going. So one more reason why an intergenerational team makes sense.
Sometimes my job in real estate like a time machine, because what you conceive today, it will be present in 10 years, for example, and you need to try to imagine how the world, how the social rituals will look like in 10 years from now, especially after those changes that today we see how they accelerated. And even more, this real estate will be present in the world for another 30 years. So you need to think future forward, and this young generation may support this in the beautiful way.
Yep, agreed.
So the last question from my side, Chip, or rather nice question for you, to you, from our team, Generation for Generation. Would you mind to give us a kind of a blessing for what we are doing? Because we will use your wisdom, we will use your tips from the book that are present there. We will share these stories. We will create certain podcasts to show that it's happening step by step. We will create the generation intelligence concept, which is supportive for today's world. What would you say to us as a group of people who are trying actually to kill the stereotypes?
I would say, yes, do it, please. Be a pioneer. Be early in this, because the more that you can prove what you're doing, the more you're a role model for other people around the world who will look to what you're doing and admire it and want to emulate it, do the same thing.
Thank you very much. I really wanted to close it in a way that it's energizing the team. I hope it will.
Yes.
I'm sure it will bring the message forward. So without further ado, thank you very much for that discussion, for that intro to your book, and we'll keep you posted what is new, how we are progressing with our project, and hopefully one day we'll see each other in person.
Yes. I want to see my Polish pioneers in person.
Check. Thank you very much.
Thank you.